After just a season in charge, Mauricio Pochettino has left Chelsea. Some of the reaction from the English press. No more. Poch out.
What?
I'm out. Out. Yes, Jurgen and Gab with us. Guys still here in the studio. Gab, season ticket holder at Chelsea. What's going on here?
Well, look, Pochettino kind of hinted at this, that his situation wasn't so solid, and it surprised a lot of people because there's, they finished the season with 5 consecutive wins, finishing in 6th place. It looked like some things were finally clicking. Certainly, what a lot of people are reporting, and what's also my understanding, is that there was a breakdown in the relationship, not so much with Todd Boehly, who of course is, many people see him as the face of the club, but he is a minority shareholder. Clear Lake, the other big fund that's involved with Bedad Egbali, they were they weren't happy. They were very big on the analytics department, on the 2 directors of football, Paul Winstanley and Lauren Stewart, and that's why they embarked on this kind of journey with all the young players, with their idea, all the money that they spent on the Malagustos and Jacksons and Caicedos and so on, and that was their idea, and you had to follow it through. Pochettino reportedly at one point, some say as early as December, said, "Well, hang on a minute, all these young players are good, but if we're going to achieve our targets, some of these guys aren't suited, some of them are too raw, leaving aside all the injuries. Can we get some veterans in there as well to balance it out?" And they just had different views about which way it was going to go. Supposedly, it's one of those amicable parting of the ways. Make of that what you will. But I think what's critical now for Chelsea is that if they are going to embark down this road, spend all the money on the youngsters, develop the youngsters, somehow balance the books as well at the same time, they have to get a manager who's very much on board in that. A manager who's going to grow with the team, not somebody who comes in with a reputation like Pochettino, who says, "Well, hang on a minute, I don't want to finish, 6th or 7th, 2-3 years in a row. I want to go and I want to compete straight away." And I think that was part of the failure to communicate on this occasion.
What do you make of it all, Stevie?
I think Pochettino's well out of it. Clearly these people upstairs, particularly Stuart and Winstanley, seem to think they know best. And so far, every single man and his dog has told them the same thing Poch told them, is that we can't go forward with so many young guys. They need some experience around them to make them better. These guys again are talking about bringing young players along. Young players are not brought along by other young players. You need older heads, you need experienced heads, and not necessarily guys that are going to play every single game, but they need to teach them how just the raw opponents parts of the game. And so they try to tell a guy who's been there and done it and actually grown a side like Tottenham, and they're telling him basically that he's not doing it the right way. In my opinion, Poch is well out of it. I don't think his reputation has changed any from being at Chelsea. And the fact that there's so many big jobs available just now just means that maybe he can go and get a proper job and not have people upstairs telling him what to do that actually don't understand, that they don't know what they're talking about.
So right now the Chelsea job is not a proper job for any manager.
I mean, again, if you listen to what Gab's saying there, they basically want a puppet in. Now, is that the best thing for a bunch of young players? They don't need a puppet who's going to listen to and be told what to do from people up the stairs who clearly don't understand the nuances of the game. Yes, they can spot good players because they've got plenty of money, and most of us could go and spend a lot of money on good players, but you need somebody to put them together and somebody to bring them along. And if you think you can go and get a puppet and bring him in and tell him what to do and that's going to work, then you're just asking for more trouble.
Gab?
I don't want to. Stuart and Winstanley don't need me to defend them. What they would say is, no, we don't want a puppet, but we want somebody who's going to buy into this plan that we have. And this plan is built around.
Are you a puppet? No,
we bring you the players. We bring you the players. You coach the players, and we're not going to judge you on whether you qualify for the Champions League in your first season. We're not judging you on results. We're judging you on our own metrics, on whether this team is improving, on whether the players are improving. And they were very clear about that. Look, that's their line. They would also point out that, look, Thiago Silva was there, Raheem Sterling was there. You know, you have players who've been there, done that, and bought the T-shirt. So it's not all kids. But equally, Pochettino says, well, wait a minute. Some of these guys that you bought that are supposed to be phenomenal, yeah, Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, to name but two, who reportedly were kind of sticking points here. These guys both cost more than 100 million. They're nice players. They're not players who are worth that. And they're going to struggle in the system. And I think that is the difficulty. And if you look at where Stewart and Winstanley came from, yeah, no, they're not coaches, but one came from Brighton, one was at Monaco, and before that at the Red Bull organization. These are clubs that won, that did really, really well, and where the manager was, I don't want to say interchangeable, but managers came and went, and what stuck behind was the organization's philosophy. And that is what supposedly Bowley and Igbali are trying to instill at Chelsea. That is supposedly what Pochettino bought into when he arrived, and that is what, in their view, he didn't deliver, and that's why he's no longer the manager.
They were actually stringing results together. You were actually seeing some of these young players, not in huge steps, but they were making strides. It felt like this team was inching forward, and it felt like this team finished much higher than we would have anticipated midway through the season. And so the timing for me is what's confusing here, is that you're actually you're now trending in the right direction, and now we go into a holding pattern again and trying to figure out what's next. That's the part that doesn't quite match up. If indeed you're building for the future, and your future now seems brighter than what it was before, then why now make this change, and why sort of go a separate direction? And it feels like you're tinkering again. And when you tinker again and you devalue the position of the manager, I'm not quite with Stevie that it's just a puppet, but you are devaluing the importance of the position of a manager. I think that's a very slippery slope. It's a dangerous territory, and you're setting a dangerous precedent. There is a reason as to why teams that are successful usually have very good managers. Managers are important, not only in a football team, but in any corporation. You need managers that know what they're doing and that apply their experience to bringing employees, or in this case, players along. I don't quite understand the timing of it all, because it felt like Chelsea was better now than what they were midway through the season.
Gab, hold that thought. I just want to get Jurgen's take on all of this, what's going on at Chelsea.
Well, it's extremely difficult, obviously, from the outside to judge it. But I totally share Alejandro's opinion there, because it looked from the outside, following the games now the last 2 months, that they're getting more and more balanced, that the results, not only the results were coming, but also the way they played, things were kind of matching up, and it looked a lot more fluid, and it looked more of a team that Mauricio Pochettino can further develop. And he developed, I mean, especially at Spurs, he had tremendous good years in developing players, younger players, and he can do that. I think so too. He can do that with Chelsea as well. But what we don't know is all the politics behind the scenes. We don't know it. We don't know their meetings that they have, the coffees that they drink in the afternoon, and the conversations that are going on there. And maybe it drained Mauricio, maybe it drained him, and I said, you know what, they don't really get what I want to kind of achieve or do. And if you then kind of feel like over the months that you're not kind of sharing the same approach, sharing the wrong ideas, then it might be better to part ways. But I thought, and I totally agree with Alejandro, I thought they're on the right track right now.
Gab?
Look, I don't think Pochettino was the right manager in the first place, not because he's a good manager, but because they had a clear way that they wanted to do things. And to do that, you don't get a manager like Pochettino. You don't necessarily get a manager who's established to do that. You get somebody else who's more compliant, completely aligned with what they want to do. If I get you the best ingredients in the world and I say, go and make me an omelet, and you decide to make me a steak or shepherd's pie, Stevie, then I'm sorry. I'm going to fire you as a chef, even if you're good at making shepherd's pie.
All right, let's take a look at the next manager odds, though, as long as there's no
So
sweet corn
Pochettino put corn in the shepherd's pie, is what you're telling
Can
me.
be the only thing. It's Ipswich's Kieran McKenna that is top on the odds right now, followed by Roberto De Zerbi, Ruben Amorim, Thomas Frank, Thomas Tuchel again, and Michel. Tell us a bit more about Kieran McKenna being the front runner here then, Gab.
So, well, Kieran McKenna obviously got Ipswich promoted. He was formerly an assistant at Manchester United, 2 straight promotions at Ipswich. I have to say, it's a typical one where somebody's clearly doing the rounds, because he's been linked to Manchester United as well. He was linked to Brighton and now Chelsea all in the past week. Another name to throw in there as well is Enzo Maresca, also promoted, of course, with Leicester City. He was formerly Pep Guardiola's assistant at Man City. The idea is they see these as people who will work within their parameters, where they don't tell the coach how to play. They say, these are the players, these are the basic principles. Go out, win games, make the team better, develop these players, and do it with this set of players that we give you because the players are good. And it's not for everyone. Certainly, somebody like Kieran McKenna or Enzo Maresca is going to have a lot less leverage with the ownership than a more senior manager like Poch is going to have.
If you were a betting man, Gab, who would you go for as the next Chelsea manager?
Well, I think it's certainly somebody fitting that profile. So McKenna would be in the mix. Maresca would be in the mix. Amorim is an excellent manager. I don't think he fits that profile. You really have to get somebody who is aligned, because for now at least, those 2 guys, Stewart and Winstanley, with their boss Igbali, who signs the paychecks behind them, they're the ones who are saying, this is the plan. We're not going to deviate from this plan. That's why we got rid of Pochettino. So you assume that those guys might be a little bit more pliable, than somebody like Poch, who can leave here and, probably walk into another, if not top job, then, maybe the next tier down very, very quickly.
What about you, Stevie? Who do you see here? Maybe your new puppet on a string at Chelsea.
I honestly have no idea. And the reason why I have no inkling whatsoever is that, Gab's talking about they've got a plan, right? But if they've got this so-called plan, clearly the plan with buying all the younger players hasn't worked, because they're miles off it. And again, I think I agree with Gab. If the plan was to bring in somebody who would align with what they want to do, why did they bring in Pochettino? So they've gotten everything wrong so far. So what's to suggest they're going to make the right decision? I have no idea. They've tried everything. They Tuchel, they got rid of him. They brought the young guy in Potter, they got rid of him. They brought an experienced guy in Pochettino, they've got rid of him. I mean, they could go anywhere. Honestly, there's actually no formula for trying to figure out who these guys are going to sign. There's no formula, not a clue.
OK, now there are reports today that Eric Ten Hag could be on his way out at Manchester United. Oh, yes.
You don't say.
Reports from a respected Italian journalist, might I add as well. And guess what? Mauricio Pochettino at the top. So I'm going to stay with you, Stevie. Do you think this could be a good move mutually?
I would have no problem with Pochettino getting the Manchester United job. Absolutely not. Listen, he's taken a team. He took Spurs very close to the Premier League title. He got beaten in a Champions League final, so he knows what he's doing. He brought young players along. Right now the positives at United are about the young players they have. So you've got a guy who's got a past in bringing young players along, and with the finances that United should have, then you go and top that up with some quality. So I would have no problem with Pochettino being Manchester United manager.
What do you think about that, Jurgen?
Well, obviously, this will be a very busy summer in terms of the carousel of managers. I mean, there's a lot going on. Big clubs, they're looking around and trying to find a solution. Obviously, you have the Euros and you have the Copa America, and there will be usually 40 to 50% of those jobs, will be changed after the big tournaments as well. So this is a very interesting time to speculate, to come up with ideas. But as you rightfully said, and Stevie said it before, that you got to think about the leverage, of your manager you're going to bring in. Is the leverage now really strong enough with the owners, that at the end of the day deliver you then the players, the team, and the infrastructure? And what is your leverage with the players at the end of the day? Are the players behind you? Do they share your philosophy, your style of play? And if you look at today's game, you need players like, at Atalanta that totally buy into this style of football, meaning highly aggressive, high pressure, 90-minute, very physical, and always going to the extreme in your performances physically and mentally. So you need the players basically backing you, and this type of leverage is very difficult often to have for managers. Maybe you have the leverage with your players, you go well, but you don't have the leverage with your management, meaning your owners, or vice versa. And so every time these big clubs now kind of look around and look for the next manager, they need to figure out what exact profile do they really need. What fits in our environment, in our history, in our neighborhood, because Chelsea is different to Arsenal, is different to Tottenham, is different to Man United, and so on. And if you go throughout Europe, there's so many kind of cultural differences that managers that come in, they need to fit. They need to get a chance, maybe try it out for 1, 2, 3 years. But who gives you the time nowadays to go for 2 or 3 years? I always thought David Moyes was the perfect fit, absolute perfect, and I still think it today, the perfect fit for Man United. But they didn't even give him a year, So Alex Ferguson were given 4 or 5 years to win his first trophies. So today it's a very tricky environment for managers, for the clubs as well. But with the fact that ownerships change everywhere so quickly, and suddenly you have, instead of an English owner, you have an American owner, you have owners from the Middle East, you have owners from all over the places, there's a lot of issues that come on the table. And if you don't fit all those boxes, then very difficult to keep your job.
Poch, the answer at United, LA?
Well, I do know something for certain. David Moyes is not the answer. He's not the answer now. Pochettino, look, I think, in my estimation, if I'm Manchester United, it seems like a very safe choice. And you could do worse than Pochettino, I'd say that much. So, and for him, I think it seems like a natural transition as well. And I mean, it feels all too convenient, but yeah, I think it would make sense from both parties.